consecutive America's two new strategic arrangement with the ideals Unified Combat Aerial Sea aimed at China. 2 years ago, the Pacific Command of the United States are rushing to strengthen showed thought consolidation. Combat Aerial Sea is the Pentagon launched in response to China is not empty words. Recently, the information related to the U.S. outlined plans for war with China has repeatedly appeared on the report. There are analysts said, the Pentagon has warned Chinese intentions that strategic, unified combat aerial sea, because they tried to initiate absolutely does not stop at the top of the tongue. As a specific implementation of this plan, the Pacific Command U.S. are equipped warships and advanced combat aircraft, most of which are arranged around China. So, although the U.S. military remains wary of speaking publicly in the case but a network attack China looming giant in the making. Surge. The Allies' strong hands must. Newspaper The Huffington Post America said that after Obama proposed return to Asia-Pacific, the role of the Pacific Command of the U.S. military increasingly heavy. Last July, a report titled Strategic Action, Situation of U.S. Forces in the Asia-Pacific, the Center for Strategic and International Studies has been submitted to the U.S. Congress. The report points out, U.S. military forces need more weapons and advanced equipment as Marines, multi-purpose fighters, nuclear submarines in Asia-Pacific, while continuing to increase stationed in Guam strength to cope with increased indeterminacy in this area due to the rise of China poses. This view is consistent with the attitude of the commander of the Pacific Command Samuel Locklear. America. The Military Times, my previous posts that Admiral Locklear admitted. The most important task at present is the long-term perspective, building a regional Pacific key strategies, complex reconstruction force, to cope with unexpected events in this region. The Jane's Defense Weekly, he analyzed, for many makers of American policy, the ability to anti-intervention, stop area A2, AD, increasingly the Chinese military has created enormous challenges to continue to maintain military superiority. The U.S. military surge and strategic layout adjustment is inevitable. In general, U.S. military forces deployed in the West Pacific has two big features. First, the combination of the actual building up forces and payment of mobile library. On enhancing practical force, the number of permanent warships in Japan rose from 19 units to 23 units. Deployed nuclear attack submarines equipped with cruise missiles, SSGN, and machine stealth fighter resident in Guam. Deploy littoral combat ships in Singapore new style. But, due to the impact of the economic crisis from 2008 to the present, the U.S. military will certainly have to cut military spending in the next 10 years. Would like to take to strengthen the actual forces surrounded a large scale to the front line for China obviously can pass the Pentagon's financial resources. At the same time, the U.S. military said that the layout of large forces on the front lines will not secure in the face of long-range strike force increasingly Chinese army. So, along with the strengthening of forces in the front line, the Pacific Command of the United States will deploy more forces in areas outside the coverage of long-range strike force China. Aims-based advantages and maneuverability strong, rapidly strengthening regional forces to target the crisis. Xinhua, China said, the past 2 years, under the command of the Pacific Command, Fleet 3, resident in the west coast of the U.S., has repeatedly taken the military nominally as exchange complex maneuvers to get to the western Pacific. Each top fighter F-22 U.S. Air Force bases alternate playing in the front line. There are 12 deployed in Okinawa. Second, continue to enhance the combat capability allies. Some countries in Asia-Pacific is an online battleground before China is Washington's room. In recent years, along with the deeply enhanced Co-US-Japan military alliance, US-South Korea, the US-Australia, the United States was embroiled in a row India and ASEAN countries, disseminating propaganda through the Chinese state. Jianguo said that the general command of the Pacific became abominable scourge dives, according to THX, stimulated by strategic shift to the east of the Pentagon the last 2 years. U.S. Navy continuously adjusts the layout number of warships in the Pacific and the Atlantic, moving much more warships to the Pacific Command of the United States. Next, Secretary of the Navy Remus. Early August, U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta reaffirmed the U.S. Navy will be redeployed 270 warships. From the rate of 50% for each region, the Atlantic and Pacific now converted into 60% for the Pacific region by 2020. Media have said that compared to some other strategic command, Pacific Command continuously strengthening has become the scourge dives, obnoxious, i.e. loan crisis to play financing, but the work of ensuring logistics is somewhat outdated. Because so many soldiers on the types of warships is what the Pacific coast of the United States, even more remote areas such as Japan, Guam, led to a series of problems such as the housing situation of the soldiers became straight, couples living apart in 2 places for a long time, the children's education difficulties, consecutive appearance. If these problems are not resolved in a short time, will cause negative effects for the spirit of the American soldiers. China reported that subjective assessment. Conflicting factions within the U.S. Navy under which aggravated. 6 months ago, the U.S. Navy disbanded the Atlantic Fleet, renamed Fleet Command, mainly in charge of coaching and managing maritime forces in the waters of the Atlantic. There are analysts said, this change has caused many negative consequences. Because the Atlantic Fleet, not only oldest, founded in 1906, 1 year earlier than the Pacific Fleet Ocean, further in the Cold War has always been a most substantial forces of the U.S. Navy. However, after the Soviet Union disintegrated, the Atlantic Fleet, gradual signs of squeezed lemon peeled, to date not only lost its name, the inherent warships were constantly being transferred to Thailand. Bin Duong, led some senior soldiers complained, even appear contradictory technical and personnel within the force. There are indications that some senior generals Atlantic Fleet not resigned the leadership of the Pacific Fleet, moreover does not understand the situation Pacific region. Closely overdue to express discontent, which some people even belittled colleagues at the Pacific Fleet, the complete arbitrariness of comments posted THX. Beat the elite forces wanted to move backward. In collaboration with the major changes in maritime force, Marines are U.S. forces rated considered important forces in Asia-Pacific. Also in succession to leave Afghanistan, goes into orbit new, ready to fight against China. Japanese military experts Kosuke Takahashi said that, although 4,700 troops Expeditionary Cluster 3 U.S. Marines about to pull out of Okinawa, this absolutely does not mean that the U.S. military carried out narrowing in the Western Pacific. In fact, the U.S. forces withdrew had just scattered to other bases in the Pacific region, such as Guam and Hawaii, absolutely no signs of leaving the Asia-Pacific. Not only that, the military also is enhancing the ability to respond quickly to beat the forces in Okinawa. The most notable action is permanently deployed 24 rotating wing transport aircraft Osprey MV-22 Airport Futenma to replace the helicopter CH-46E. Kosuke Takahashi said that, like the MV-22 helicopter can be stored vertical landing, and they also have speed patrols as fixed-wing aircraft, in flight status with balance, speed, journey and loading capabilities of this plane respectively than 2, up to 4 and 3 helicopters than usual. Obviously, the United States Rush troops deployed MV-22 aircraft which exists safety problems in Futenma. It intends to strengthen defense cooperation with Japan for Cluster 3 expeditionary troops U.S. Marines, while more effectively prevent the extremist actions of the Chinese Army in the Senkaku and the Taiwan Strait. The Stars and Stripes, Americans say, by local people protest secession. Lot aircraft Osprey MV-22 first arrived in Okinawa has not yet been allowed to fly. However, a document the U.S. Marines were defined revealed 6 low-level flight training routes in Japan, respectively. Northwest flying through Akita, Northeastern line flew through Miyagi. Regular online Hokushinetsu through Niigata, Shikoku line Kii Peninsula, Kyushu and defensive line Amami Islands. If such arrangements are, indeed, can avoid flying directly over 4 major Japanese cities including Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya and Fukuoka, but could cover the majority of the eastern region of Japan. After Japan agreed, U.S. Marines also plan things detachments to 6 MV-22 aircraft stationed at the station periodically Aviation Iwakuni Marine Barracks and Large Fuji in Honshu, each time 2 to 3 days on duty. MV-22 aircraft in the large barracks Fuji plans to fly 500 times per year, accounting for about 10% or more of the total volume of operations of the base. Situation in Iwakuni Air Station similar. Osprey aircraft operations accounted for approximately 0.8% of the total amount of the operation of this base. Thus, the routes of the Osprey can extend to the whole of Japan.